Okay, and welcome to the review for quiz number 18, where I am basically going to spend the whole time contradicting myself with this very first part. The very first thing I have to say is that all microphones will work with all sounds, okay? There are no hard and fast rules about you must use this microphone in this application. This thing must be recorded by this microphone. You should always experiment, use your ears, listen to what sounds good, what sounds bad. Use it in these different microphones in different ways. And this is how new techniques are born, right? And different things happen. But, right, here's where I go contradicting all of that. Because I'm going to go through 4 applications of different types of microphones and give you sort of the common knowledge, what's sort of developed as a standard routine for what microphones are used for what sounds, okay? And I guess I highly recommend that you start out with these. You kind of master these before you start saying, okay, well, now let's switch out this type of microphone for that type of microphone. All right, get kind of your baseline first of setting up your recordings this way. And the other thing is, right, I'm always worried about these mythological snobs that you might run into, right? If you set up your session like this, the snobs may, like the worst thing the snob would say is like, oh, how boring, you do it the same way everybody who knows what they're doing does it, right? And I would rather have that than, I don't think you know what you're doing. Okay, good. So, moving on. Kick drums. I suggest large dynamic microphones. Specifically, we've got the Beta 52 and the D112. We have both of these microphones downstairs at the studio. They are designed for kick drums. They're going to accentuate the low frequency while still trying to get some of the attack of the kick drum. Yeah, as sort of an experiment one semester, I remember we threw one of these up as a vocal microphone, and the person we had it on was like, hey, his voice sounds pretty good through the kick drum microphone. So again, yeah, maybe something to experiment and have fun with, but yeah, know that those are designed to be kick drum microphones. And that you should, if you have access to just one, don't put something else on the kick drum and use that for the vocal microphone, right? Put it on the kick drum. Okay, number 2. Snare drums and amplifiers use a small diaphragm dynamic. Our friend, the SM57. Okay, this is, yeah, kind of the biggest unwritten rule, right? SM57 sounds good on snare drums. It sounds good on guitar amplifiers close up right next to the speaker cone. And yeah, again, if you do that, you put the 57 on a snare on the guitar amplifier, right? You need to know what that sounds like and know that that is the industry standard. Okay. And there are tons of copies of the SM57, right? You may run into a situation where they don't have an actual SM57, but, you know, it's like the ND257, right, by some other company, and you're like, oh, well, it's trying to be an SM57, and you put that on the snare drum. Probably will sound better than a condenser or some other, well, yeah. Don't get me off onto that. All right, right. Again, you can. Any mic will work on any source, and it will have its pluses and minuses. For vocal microphones in the studio, okay. In the studio, I'm going to suggest large diaphragm condensers like the U87 or the Audio-Technica 4033. Again, just a few quizzes back, right, we were saying how live sound, I'll usually like the SM58, but in a studio where you're trying to get more of the high frequencies, more of that studio vocal sound, you want a larger diaphragm condenser. Okay. Lastly, for overheads and cymbals, I will recommend small diaphragm condensers. The ones we have downstairs are called the SM81s. I haven't introduced you them in here, but we may have used them downstairs in the studio. I guess we also have the NT4 that I talked about. That's two small diaphragm condensers that are already set up in an XY pattern to do your stereo recording. Okay, so again, none of these are hard and fast rules, but I highly recommend that you do a bunch of recordings using this type of setup, especially because you have access to those things downstairs in the studio. Get that as sort of your baseline, and then start experimenting with mics, trying to make them do what they weren't meant to do. All right, thank you very much.